Yes. What the hell is wrong with you? What the hell is wrong with you?
Hey, good evening, everybody. Happy Monday. Up for another episode of Ryno's Rants. I got a crew in the comment section already. Evening, Nick. Evening, Doc. Evening, my worthless opinion. Great to have you guys on board as usual. We're kind of hitting that lull a little bit in the news type stuff, but of course we had the big news late last week, noon on Friday-ish, that the Vikings officially released Dalvin Cook, a move that had seemed at the very least possible, if not likely, for about 4 months. Yet, for some reason or another, the Vikings fan base as a whole decided to lose their ever-loving freaking minds over the whole situation. It just like caught them off guard out of the blue. I saw everything on social media from, well, the team no longer has any players that I like to cheer for, so I don't even know why I need to continue to be a fan, to what the hell is Kwesi doing? He's over his head. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Hey, Ken, good evening. Basically it's one of the best players on the team, and yet we get rid of him. Why? This, back and forth, and it's that groupthink, overreact to everything that happens kind of thing. I mean, the same people that are sitting there saying the Vikings have to get younger, they have to get better, they have to do all this other stuff, they have to get rid of some of these guys in order to get new players on the team. Then when one of their favorite players gets released, well, we didn't mean him. No, not him. What the hell are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. It's like that SpongeBob meme where he's running around. There's 100 of them and the whole place is on fire. And it's Deanne, good evening. All about the money. Realistically, yeah, that's what it is about. Is Dalvin Cook a washed-up, has-been player that's not any good anymore? No. Dalvin Cook is still a very good running back, and he's going to have a good year wherever he goes. But when it comes down to it, is you cannot pay a premium price for a non-premium position. And unfortunately, the running back position has become a non-premium, pretty much interchangeable position. I mean, you look at teams like Kansas City last year. Isaac Pacheco comes out there. Basically, he's a seventh-round guy. He was their leading running back last year. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, former first-rounder, relegated to second string, when he was healthy. Skull for Life, good evening. Welcome, Ray. But yeah, so it's been funny kind of scrolling through the bits of social media and whatnot the last few days here, just seeing some of the stuff that people are losing their mind. Vikings needed the cap space. Absolutely can. They did. Realistically, we've got like 4 guys right now that are going to need new contracts sooner rather than later. The first of which being Danielle Hunter, who we'll break into him a little bit more here in a bit. But then you've also got TJ Hawkinson, who is going into his 5th year and has to be signed before the season is over, because if we let him get to free agency, he's going to command a lot more than we can probably sign him for right now. And then, of course, we have Justin Jefferson, who basically is going to get as I've said many times, the piece of paper with a pen slid across the table and tell us what you're thinking of for a number. As Deanne said here a minute ago, it's all about the money. By cutting Dalvin Cook, we saved $9 million in cap space, which puts us at like 18 and a quarter right now, which I believe is the 6th most cap space in the league right now. So say what you will, but Kwesi has done a masterful job clearing up cap space to allow this team to make some moves, make some, contract renegotiations and extensions and things like that, plus have a little bit of money sitting aside for, God forbid, week 4, somebody important goes down, one of the key players or something that we need to go out and find somebody. We have a little bit of money that we can sign somebody. Evening, Dan. But, if we could have found a trade market for Dalvin Cook, we would have saved $11 million instead of $9 million. Now there is, and I forget exactly how this works, but there's something with some offset. When Dalvin Cook signs with another team, there's a possibility we could get that $2 million back. I'm not quite sure how that works, or if there's a threshold that has to be met for that kind of stuff. Skull for life, we for sure don't want to get into a bidding war with Hunter. I don't think we do either. It's in our best interest, I think, to sign him now. I mean, we've already been told now today that he's not showing up for mandatory minicamp this week because he's not happy with the situation. And to Hunter's credit, he's grossly underpaid. He's getting $5 million in new money this year. For a top 10 edge rusher, that is highway robbery. Doc, we lost some guys we like. Jersey sent to the back of the closet. Absolutely. Can't think of anybody we should have kept so far. I can't either, Doc. I mean, truth be told, hey, evening, Dave. Truth be told, I was a fan of every one of the guys that we got rid of this year. Adam Thielen, always a big fan. He's a great individual. Eric Kendricks, I've been a fan of since he got here. Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook's the best running back we've had here. He's probably top 3 to 4 all time in Vikings history. But you start looking at the stuff, and now the word is coming out from Dalvin Cook's camp that don't expect him to take a cheap deal, by cheap meaning like $4 to $5 million deal. They're fully expecting something in that $8 million plus range. Is he going to get it? I don't know. I honestly don't, because teams just don't want to pay big money to running backs right now, because it's become a very interchangeable position. Is it fair to the running backs? No, it's not. But it's just the way the league has gone. The league has gone to it's more of a passing league now, and you can get by with some 2 or 3 average to decent running backs in a running back by committee versus having that one bell cow guy that's going to get you 25, 30 carries a game and carry the load. There's a lot of times we're not even running the ball 30 times a game now. Hey, G-Mac, you made it before the show's over tonight. Welcome. Delvin has to understand he's not getting that kind of cabbage. I agree with that, Nick. I don't think they believe it yet. Might get 6.5. That's about it. I would say that, I think 7 is probably about the top of what he's going to find out that he's going to get as offers. I don't think he's going to sit out this year, because we saw when Le'Veon Bell did that. His career was never the same after that. But if it does get down to that 6 to 7 range, I can see it being a 1-year deal so that he can try to cash in again next year, which, again, you're going to run into the same thing. But, case in point on the running backs, just today, the Patriots cut running back James Robinson. They signed him to a 2-year deal back in March, and they've already cut him. Somebody offers Dalvin 5, he should take it and run, pun intended. I think that's reasonable. Do I think he's going to take that right now? No. Now, if it gets closer to the start of the season and that's the best offer he's got on the table, then I think he ultimately swallows his pride and takes it. And I understand where these guys are coming from. from their standpoint, they're, not 3 years ago, even 3-4 years ago, running backs were commanding this, $10 to $15 million a year range. And just all of a sudden like that, they're not. But, and I've said it time and time again about giving, the fact that how I'm against giving running backs a big second contract just because of their wear and tear that they take on a daily basis, which, they should get paid. I'm not arguing that point. They should get paid decently, but it's just the way of the game. It's a business. And, we knew coming in and surprisingly, a lot of this didn't happen last year, which honestly, it probably should have. Does need to learn to get to camp quick, takes time to learn offense. Absolutely, Doc. Example A, Zeke Elliott. Zeke Elliott's another guy that's sitting out there on the open market. Now, to Dalvin's credit, I believe Dalvin Cook is a better running back at this point in a career than Zeke Elliott is. Zeke, pretty much once he signed his second contract, he just went downhill. Cook, of course, last year, he was bottom 5 in the league as far as runs of 0 or negative yardage, which was part of the problem. He was still the 6th leading rusher in the league, but that was those home run balls that he hit that got that. But that's 1 or 2 plays, every game or two. The problem, and what kind of hamstrung the offense a little bit, was the fact that, those first down runs where he's getting 0 yards, -1 yards, or whatever, you're putting the team in 2nd and 10, 2nd and 8, 2nd and 11, and that kind of limits what you can do with the playbook. Now, if you don't have the home run threat of a Dalvin Cook anymore, but to the point of Alex Madison, he's more of a power type back who's going to get you, like a Leroy Horde. If you need 1 yard, I'll get you 3. If you need 5, I'll get you 3. But you move into from 2nd and 11 to 2nd and 9, and now you're moving into 2nd and 5 to 6. That opens up the playbook. You can run again, you can pass, you can do all this other stuff. And realistically, we all saw it last year, how for big stretches in the middle of the games, after that first scripted plays and whatnot, the Vikings offense would go into a shell for better part of 2 quarters. And a lot of that had to do with when they were trying to run the ball, they were not successful on first down a lot of the time. Is that all on Dalvin Cook? No, it's not. But, that's a big part of it. Mr. Bad Vintage took Cook 5 years to get an operation on that shoulder early on, neglected it to wear his harness. For one, not disappointed with his departure. I tend to agree with you on that. Like I said, I'm a Dalvin Cook fan. I like Dalvin Cook. But my thought always is team first, players second. So with Dalvin's contract the way it is, and the fact that he's only played an entire season once, it didn't make financial sense to keep him around, especially at that contract, especially when you've got Alex Madison, you've got Ty Chandler, you've got Kene Nwangwu, and we just drafted Dwayne McBride. You've got those guys who in a running back by committee are going to be successful enough to make this offense move. And I think it's not, and I'm not trying to be sacrilegious here or, talking down Dalvin Cook, but I think the offense is going to be better this year just because that running game is going to be a little more balanced. It's not, not going to be forced to be feeding Dalvin Cook the ball continuously because he's the guy out there getting $12, $14 million a year. We can mix it up. We can, when we want to power it up the middle, we got Dalvin. You want to try to break it outside, you've got Nwangwu, or you've got Chandler. Want a little bit of a mix, you've got McBride. I think this is going to open up a lot of things. I could be wrong. We could fall flat on our face, but I think the running game is going to be just fine. Again, some of that falls back on the offensive line. Are they able to block? Are they able to open up holes? All that kind of stuff. But Yeah, I think I want to put a bow on the whole Dalvin Cook thing because we've kind of pounded that into the ground, no pun intended, here the last couple of weeks. Great move. Younger players needed to play skill positions are fine. I agree with that 100%, Ken. Fresh legs coming in, rotating Raymond, absolutely. I mean, with this, we're paying basically a third of what Dalvin Cook was going to cost us for Alex Madison this year. And then you've got the other three guys are still on rookie deals. The running back room got younger, it got cheaper, and I think we're going to be good. Running back by committee. That's the way the league is going. We have to remember, Kevin O'Connell was in Los Angeles, and that's what they did there for a lot of it. They had their main guy, but dealing with injuries and stuff, they ended up going with a lot about running back by committee stuff, and it worked. You see a lot of other teams across the league, running back by committees work. Kansas City, they have Jerick McKinnon backing up Pacheco, and then they had Edwards-Helaire thrown in there. At least the Cook soap opera is over. Dave, yes. And that's why I just wanted to put a bow on it with this show. And we can, as our buddy Drew always says, I must now turn my back on you. Here's your $3,500. Have a nice day. Glad it's done regardless of how it turned out. Yep, absolutely. But so now we trade in one drama and whatever you want to call it for another as we look into the Danielle Hunter saga. Word came out, these guys don't play, they can't get better. Ken, that's absolutely true. Of course, word came out today on early Monday that Danielle Hunter was not planning on showing up for the team's mandatory minicamp this week. He will incur fines for not doing so. Hey, Chris, good evening. Thanks for joining. Such a terrible offensive line. Cook was handcuffed, could not run effectively on first down. That was part of it. Is it all on the offensive line? No. Is it all on Cook? No. It's a combination of things, but this is about getting younger, getting cheaper, and being able to spend the money at more premium positions other than running back, which, as we've talked about here earlier tonight, has become a largely interchangeable, shuffle one guy in, running for a couple of years, shuffle another guy out, rinse, lather, repeat. But with Danielle Hunter, now he's scheduled to only make roughly a little over $5 million in new money this year, which, as I mentioned before, is an absolute steal for a top 10 edge rusher in the league, which I do believe Danielle Hunter is. So he is holding out until he gets a new contract. Now, this is kind of a little bit of a conundrum here, we'll put it that way. The Vikings have came out and said they want Hunter here. Brian Flores has come out and said that he wants Danielle Hunter on his defense. It's just going to boil down to what, is his camp going to dig in and say, no, we need Joey Bosa money. We need, that kind of range where you're talking $25 million a year. If they're stuck on something like that, I think there's going to be a problem. To me, Hunter, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, I believe Hunter probably would slot into that 22 million range, 20 to 22. You get up much beyond that. And with Kwesi's been showing this year, especially, his kind of target range for players is getting them in that, 25, 26-year-old range coming off their first contract, maybe some guys that have something to prove. Hunter will be 29 years old in, I believe it's October. It becomes a question mark here. Do the Vikings want to get rid of Danielle Hunter? I don't think that they do. But I also do believe that Kwesi will draw a line in the sand saying, this is what the best we're going to do. This is what we can do. If that's not going to be acceptable and they reach an impasse, then I do think there may be some credence to this trade talk. Now, as Lance and I talked about on the show on Friday, the rumors of teams calling about Danielle Hunter did not come out of TCO Performance, according to Darren Wolfson of KSTP in Minneapolis. And Doogie is very well connected. He's got a lot of inside information. And if he says it did not come from the Vikings, I tend to believe him, which means it came from one of two other places, either some team trying to get the media involved to kind of push the Vikings to maybe considering making a trade, or the more likely scenario is it's Danielle Hunter's camp not being happy with the way the contract negotiations are going to this point, so they are leaking it out to try to drum up business with the other teams who may be interested and had not yet called the Vikings. Can think the Vikings can get 2 first-rounders, maybe a 1 and a 3. I guess my starting stance with Danielle Hunter is 2 first-rounders. Are you going to get 2 first-rounders? I don't think you're going to. A 1 and a 3, depending upon where that 1 and a 3 falls. If it's early, what's going to project to be in that early to mid 1 and 3, then you definitely got to consider it. If it's tail end of the first and third, then you're going to have to sweeten that pot a little bit. Something there, a 1 and a 2. Regardless of where the 1 and the 2 sit in the round, I think I would take that. Because as we all know, I shan't have a feeling we get a 2 and a 6 for Hunter. Unless there's no chance of signing him, I don't settle for that. I don't. You kind of look at what Khalil Mack got, when the Bears traded to get him. And I think that's a start point. Can't see a team giving up a first. I mean, like we mentioned, Hunter's a top 10 pass rusher in this league, and quality pass rushers don't grow on trees, which is also why I don't think the Vikings should just be giving him away for little or nothing. I mean, because without Danielle Hunter on here, we largely have nothing proven as far as edge rushers. I mean, we've got guys who have shown up in spurts. Patrick Jones II has looked good, in limited capacity. DJ Wanham has shown sparks from here and there, but he's inconsistent, I guess, and hasn't, that year, 2 years ago when he had 8 sacks, 5 of them came against the Chicago Bears. So against the other 15 games that year, he had 3 sacks. Marcus Davenport has shown signs, but he's kind of got that Mike Zimmer syndrome. He's up 1 year, he's down the next. He's up 1 year, he's down the next. Now, if he continues that trend, 2023 should be an up year for him. But if we deal Hunter, I think we're going to have to look for another edge rusher with some experience out there, at least to begin with. Going to be very disappointed by the return. Most reporters think Rappaport think it's a 2nd-round pick. You might be right, but I don't start there. And if becomes a bidding war for Hunter, which there very well could be, I think you can probably get that first round out of there, a 1 and a 1 and a 3 or 1 and a 4, maybe ultimately. We lose Hunter, we're screwed. The rest of the defense collapses. I mean, that's one thing I'm concerned with here is, especially with Flores' defense is predicated on rushing the passer and getting pressure on the quarterback, knocking him off his point, making him uncomfortable, making him make mistakes. Without Danielle Hunter, do we have guys that can do that? I mean, we have a lot of guys, but we don't know what they can produce. I mean, we've got the undrafted rookie Andre Carter, who I think is going to be a very good edge rusher. It may take him a couple years. Dave, I completely agree. I don't, unless there's no chance of re-signing him, I don't let him go for anything less than a 1, and ideally mid-round pick of some sort along with that 1. Hey, Doc, you got it out there. Took 3 times, but you got it. First and a third is a start. For me, a first and a third is about where I would settle for. I start higher than that, of course. I start 2 number ones. You give me 2 number ones, Danielle Hunter's yours. And they're going to say you're high. Come back. They're going to go 1 and a 4. And then I'm going to say, no, 1 and a 2. Okay, we'll go 1 and a 3. Okay, deal, we're done. Lions and the Bears both have better futures than us. I'm not buying into the Bears hype. Everybody's anointing Justin Fields as the next great quarterback. He was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league last year. He was a hell of a running back, but he was a very poor quarterback. I don't know that they've got enough weapons around him yet to make a difference. And until he proves that he can be more than just a running back that occasionally throws the ball, I'm not scared of Chicago at all. Detroit's going to be tough. Detroit is going to be tough. I mean, they came on like gangbusters at the end of last year. And I truly believe that the 2 teams in the division this year are us and Detroit. And I still think we hold the edge over Detroit because until the Lions prove that they're not the Lions, there's always going to be that shadow of a doubt hanging over that franchise. But, it's going to be interesting. We're going to see what happens here in minicamp. We'll see what the guys not named Danielle Hunter can maybe put out there as far as practice. Granted, they're just in shells and shorts right now, so it's not like they're doing a lot of hitting and a lot of that kind of stuff, but it's still where the coaching staff, I mean, they got to be preparing for this contingency that we do not end up with Danielle Hunter this year. And so I'm sure they're working on that. They're working through these guys that we've got in camp just to see what we've got. And I'm sure they're looking at the waiver wire out there. There's a couple of guys. I know they keep mentioning guys like Yannick Ngakoue, who I have no desire to bring back again. They have a few. There's a couple other guys out there that are currently free agents. I'd have to check the list again. But, there's not guys in their prime, of course, because anybody that's in their prime is already signed with a team. But you may be able to pick up a veteran guy that can give a little bit of leadership to the room and be effective in rotational duties at the very least. Justin Houston, yep, he's still out there. He'd be a guy I definitely would look at. Detroit hasn't won the division since the NFC Central. Detroit will Detroit. Absolutely, Dave. Fun fact, Tampa Bay has won the division more recently than the Lions did. Of course, that was also when it was still the NFC Central. But it's been since, when the hell was it? 1992 was the last time Detroit won the division. I think somewhere in there. Hey, Reggie, you made it. Smoking cheese and setting up the pool. Also got some links on the pit. Pitmaster, you are fully excused for being late with that as long as I get some of it. Ken, I would act like Hunter's gone. I think that's how they need to plan for this, and they just need to leave that part of it up to Kwesi and the front office guys to see if they can make this work. Like I mentioned in Kwesi's master plan in the title for the show tonight, Kwesi was given the inevitable and the unfavorable task of correcting this stuff that got left behind by the Zimmer and Spielman regime, all these bad contracts, overpaying for these aging players because Spielman and Zimmer drafted poorly the last 2 to 3 years and didn't have guys that could step in and fill those roles. So we have to continue to pay the old guys. And then, football's a young man's game. I mean, you start getting past that 30 mark and you start going downhill. Yannick is why we don't get prime trade value for Hunter. he's considered an elite pass rusher and he's unsigned. I don't know that he's considered elite, Doc. Decent, sure. Elite, no. Expecting 8 and 9 next year with the 14th pick in the draft. This team's going to be better than 8 to 9 wins. I have them pegged at, I think I pegged them at 11 and 6. The offense, I think, is going to be better because you've got a second year in the system. You've got a guy opposite Jefferson who can get open, spread the field a little bit more than Thielen was able to last year. You've got TJ Hawkinson for an entire year now. You've got another year of the offensive line. Ed Ingram, who started to come on at the end of last season, I expect to see him make a step forward this year. Although that being said, I still would like to see them bring in Dalton Reisner and have him compete with both Ezra Cleveland and Ed Ingram, and the best 2 of those 3 start. Worthless opinion. Make it enough for everybody. Yeah, Reggie, you got to share with the class, man. Kwesi has shown nothing to be confident in besides the Hawk trade. I see that a lot. And my thoughts on Kwesi is, and like I started to say here earlier, Kwesi was given a very tough task of turning this franchise around from the mess that got left to him. And we cannot expect that to be fixed in a year. It's going to take a couple of years. It's going to take probably into 2024 when they inevitably, at least as it sits right now, probably move on from Kirk Cousins. If they can find themselves a suitable quarterback of the future that they get in, drafting a guy early next year and are able to move on from Kirk, then, it's good. Kwesi and KOC are going to put their stamp on this team. Right now, this is still remnants of the Spielman-Zimmer team. You can't just wipe everything clean in 1 year, which, to what a lot of us were talking about is they should have started some of this last year. But they ran it back just to see what they could do. And now they're coming in, to their credit, saying, okay, we need to make changes here, 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 and here. We need to get rid of some of these bloated contracts. We need to did some of that. I want them to at least bring in Reisner's wife. As our buddy Drew would say, definitely a meow meow there. Ken, 11-6, what they have. Matt Naylor is the one to watch. By all accounts, just through OTAs and stuff this year, Jalen Naylor has been one of the most impressive players on the field. Will Ragatz from Sports Illustrated said he has probably caught more passes out there than any other wide receiver on the team, due largely to the fact that Justin Jefferson's been out. But they said he is all over the field. He's making plays. He is solidifying himself as that wide receiver 4, which, KJ Osborne's going into a contract year here as well. So if KJ has a good season and we aren't able to sign him next year, Jalen Naylor is sitting in there in the wings ready to be wide receiver 3 in 2024, which is a good thing. This is how you're supposed to do it. You develop these kids to come up behind the one and fill the holes of the guys that leave eventually. So only quarterbacks drafted next year, May and Caleb Williams. They are definitely the top 2 right now. There are other quarterbacks that are going to be coming out next year, I think, that are going to be pretty good. It's going to be a big quarterback class, I think. But I'm not going to say never on either Caleb Williams or Drake May, because word came out, after this year's draft, that if Carolina did not end up taking Bryce Young, Minnesota was prepared to jump up to number 2 to get Young. They wanted it. They wanted Bryce Young. And from all the sources I've heard from and everything else, that they were going to do what they needed to do to go up and get him. So I would not rule out depending upon where we're sitting, a trade up to that top 2 next year to get one of those 2 quarterbacks. So, and if you've got a mortgage, 3 or 4 first round picks or whatever to get that quarterback of the future, how could we have jumped from 23 to 2? You'd be looking at your first round pick from 2023, first round pick from 2024, probably the first round pick from 2025, and some additional compensation of some sort. It's doable. Would you have had to give up a ton to do it? Yeah, you would have. But from what I've been told, they were prepared to do so. So I'm not going to rule it out for next year either. 3 firsts wouldn't be enough. Probably not on its own. You'd have to throw a couple other picks in there too. But if you're spreading them out over a couple of drafts, and the thing of it is, if you finally hit on that franchise quarterback, the next Patrick Mahomes, the next Joe Burrow, nobody's going to care how much you gave up to get that kid if he turns out. The only time people are going to care about what you gave up to get a quarterback early on is if he flames out. And you end up like the Bears when they traded up, when they were basically bidding against themselves to get Mitch Trubisky a few years back, and things like that. Some of these guys that have moved up to get quarterbacks that don't pan out. Worth it to make the jump if it's your guy, Doc? Absolutely. And they proved this past draft that they're not just going to take somebody if he's not their guy, because Will Levis was sitting right there at pick 23. If we wanted a quarterback badly enough, we would have taken Will Levis at 23. I'm glad we didn't, because there was just the vibe that Will Levis gave off from the get-go. He gave me that Sam Darnold type vibes. What the hell the name of the kid in the movie Draft Day, that quarterback from Wisconsin on there, kind of that same feel of the way, that he was going to be, issues with the entitlements and attitudes and that kind of stuff. So I was out on Will Levis, and I'm glad the team was too. And they just showed that they were able to, they're going to pick the guy that they feel, that they believe it, not just picking a guy to pick a guy like Spielman did with Ponder. Bears dropping from 1 to 9, Ned them a future first, 2 seconds, and TJ Moore, who was worth it. Jumping from 23 to 2 would have cost us Darisaw or Jefferson. We wouldn't have traded Darisaw or Jefferson. They're two of the guys on this team that are untouchable. There's not many on this team that are. I'm saying those two are, and I'm saying probably Brian O'Neill. Other than that, Hawkinson would be close to an untouchable in my opinion, but other than that, I think anybody would have been on the table. Believe me, Hall is going to be good. Difference is KOC will help him, unlike Zimmer. I agree with that. I mean, we've already seen Kevin O'Connell working with Jaron Hall quite a bit in OTAs and rookie camp and things like that. Now, is Jaron Hall going to be a starting caliber quarterback? I have no idea at this point. He could be, or he could just be another guy that doesn't pan out. Jumping from 23 to 2 would cost us our next 3 draft classes. Not the entire draft classes, the early picks. You're going to lose a lot of them, yeah. But you have to remember that, say 2024, we're going to move up. You're not losing your first round pick in 2024 because you're still getting one by doing one at pick 2, pick 3, whatever it is. You'd lose your first round pick in 2025 and probably 26. So yeah, you would lose, but you're not losing as much as you think you're losing by moving up there when you start really looking at what it would take. Plus, like I said, if the guy pans out and becomes the franchise quarterback that we've all been aching for since the days of Fran Tarkenton, nobody's going to care how much money you gave up or how many picks you gave up to get him. And you look back at some of these past drafts, look at a few years ago, the Vikings had 3 first-round picks. We picked Xavier Rhodes, we picked Cordero Patterson, and we picked, what's his name, the defensive tackle that ended up getting injured, and then surgery screwed him up. Can't think of what his name is right now. Nobody's going to trade off Caleb Williams or Drake May next year. depends on who it is. I mean, if there's somebody there that already has their guy, then it's possible that they would, and they need other. Sharif Floyd, thank you, GMAC. That if they've got their guy at quarterback and they need other draft capital, you're going to take 3 first-round draft picks to, because you can build your team around that. Don't want another Walker deal either. There'll be a quarterback where they are drafting. I don't know that I care for that way of thinking so much, Ken, because that's what we've done in the entire history of the franchise. We've never gone up to get our guy. We've just sat there and waited for him to fall in our lap. I mean, we got Tarkenton in the 3rd round. Tommy Kramer we got at the end of the first round. Christian Ponder, we picked at 12. He was a panic pick because all the guys that were going before already got picked, and Spielman was freaking out because we didn't have a quarterback, so he just grabbed the next name out of the hat. Dante we picked up in that range too. I think we was like pick 11, pick 12, whatever he was. Dante, I think, had the potential to turn out. He was up and down, but closest thing we've had to a franchise quarterback in the last 20 years, homegrown anyway. I sitting there waiting until the end. Teams like KC, Buffalo, Philly, and Jacksonville have got their guy at quarterback, but none of them are getting pick number 1. No, but Kansas City, they were doing just fine with Alex Smith, and they decided that wasn't enough. They jumped up and they got Patrick Mahomes. Buffalo moved up a little bit and got Josh Allen. Philly lucked out with Jalen Hurts, getting him in the 2nd round. I mean, I was banging the table for the Vikings to take Jalen Hurts, but Jacksonville was bad enough to get their guy at number 1. It all depends on how badly you want to do it and what your philosophy is. I'm going to withhold judgment on that until next year, but I do fully believe that Kwesi has the mindset that if there's a guy that they want up high enough, they'll go get him if they can. So we'll see. I mean, it could pan out. It could end up that they don't know that anything is a better option next year, and we end up extending Kirk for another year. I don't really want that, but not worried about the specific quarterback in the draft. Big changes in philosophy that wants to draft a franchise quarterback. That's a very good point, GMAC. If they determine that I'm just throwing out names here, a Bo Nix or Quinn Ewers or somebody like that. If they determine that that's their guy and that's who they want to run the franchise, you go get one of those guys. Are they a Caleb Williams or a Drake May? No, I don't think they are, but yeah, it's going to be costly, Ishant. I know it's going to be costly, but I'm willing to pay that price if we need to. What teams are looking for quarterbacks in the 1st round? One might be sitting there for a while. I mean, it's hard to say when you start looking at that bottom of the barrel. I mean, Houston got CJ Stroud this year. The Bears have got Justin Fields. That's a kick. One of the things they get a kick out of is, there was talk that the Bears were going to move off Justin Fields and go get one of these other guys. Now all of a sudden, Justin Fields is the greatest thing since canned beer and sliced bread. There's teams. Arizona could be in the market for a quarterback if they're deciding to move off of Kyler Murray next year. It's going to be hard to say until we see how this season plays out. You might have guys that come out of nowhere and set the world on fire, and then you might have guys that are projected to be up in that high range that fall flat on their face, and the teams start looking to move on. Reggie, fuck it, wait for Arch Manning. I don't want to sit and wait and burn up another year of Justin Jefferson's and TJ Hawkinson's prime and some of these other guys, though, just waiting for Arch Manning. We can always take Arch Manning in a year or two anyway, but it's going to be a while before he's draft ready. Ever seen canned bread? It's a thing. Yep, I know it is. That's why I use it in my joke every once in a while. Need a class of more than one or two first round worthy guys, and I think 2024 is going to be that. There could be as many as 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round. I could very easily see it. All depends on who declares and who doesn't. But what you're saying is, let's say Tampa Bay is picking number 1 next year. Why would they trade away a potential quarterback? And that's where you're going to. That's like Doc just says, that's the rub. If it's somebody like Tampa Bay who probably is going to need a quarterback, then no, they're not going to. If they trade away the chance to get Caleb Williams, their fan base will riot. So there is a fine line there, but there's ways to figure things out. And like I said, once we see who all is going to come out as quarterbacks, there's a lot of time between now and we may find out after we go through training camp and preseason and things like that Jaron Hall might be something. We don't know until we see the kid play, until we give him a little time to develop. We don't know what we have in him. I don't expect anything more out of him than being a good backup, but he could surprise us all. I mean, you start looking at, guys like Rich Gannon, who we took late when we drafted him, and he was a backup for years and kind of mixed in as a starter and everything else. He leaves here and he goes and gets the MVP playing in the Super Bowl for the Raiders. I mean, there's too many variables between now and the end of the 2023 season to make a definitive answer on that, I guess, Ashant. I mean, I'm just going off what I'm seeing in my opinion here and stuff, and you have valid points on a lot of what you're saying too, and I don't disagree with it, but raising out of Utah, I like him too, Ken. My daughter went to school out in Utah for a while, so I've watched quite a bit of Utah football. The kid's he's got something. I don't know if he's gonna pan out in the NFL, but I like the way the kid plays. He's got potential. So he's definitely a kid to keep an eye on. He's somebody you could legitimately get, late first round, maybe even second round, depending upon how he plays this year. There's a lot of guys that could be coming out that we're just going to have to see how they play during the college season too. It seems like every year there's guys who they're expecting to push for the Heisman and be the top quarterbacks in the country that just do nothing. And then all of a sudden you've got a guy that comes out of nowhere. He's a leader, Ken. Yep. And yeah, he is. I like that kid's game. He's on my list of guys I'm going to be keeping an eye on again this year too. But with that, guys, we've gone on about 45, 50 minutes here. I expect it to be about a 10-minute episode this week, but a lot of great conversation, a lot of great comments. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. GMAT, Ken, Ashant, Doc, Reggie, Raymond, Dan, My Worthless Opinion, Skull for Life, all you guys, and anybody else I'm missing. Thank you so much for joining in. I love these Monday shows when I get to just talk football with you guys and banter back and forth on this stuff. I love this kind of stuff. Speaking of that, you guys make sure you tune in on Friday for the regular Vikings Uncensored 6 p.m. on Friday show. Lance and I had the pleasure of interviewing former Minnesota Viking defensive end Mark Mullaney and his brother Ryan Mullaney, who also was signed by the Vikings at one point in time, has done a lot of coaching and all that kind of stuff. We had some great stories from Mark and Ryan about the some of the stories from playing in the league. Mark talking about playing with the Purple People Eaters, and interestingly enough, if you guys were not aware, Mark Mullaney is credited with being the inventor / first person to ever wear the face mask visor. We have a great story about how that came to be as well. A great story from Ryan Mullaney about their dad worked as their agent as well, and the story about when Mike Lynn was the GM of the Vikings at the time, signed Ryan to the undrafted free agent contract. The story about what went down on there is pure gold. You guys are going to love this stuff. So make sure you tune in on Friday night. Going to be a great episode. We had planned on 15 to 20 minutes worth of interview time with these guys. We went for over an hour, just these stories, and it's the most fun I've had, and I've had a ton of fun doing this show, the Vikings Uncensored, over the last couple of years, and this is the most fun thing that we've gotten to do in this entire thing, was talk to the Mullaney brothers. You guys are going to love it. Also, make sure you watch Brunswick's Best on Wednesday, when he takes a look at the best players in Vikings history to wear the number 12. And beyond that, we'll be back with this next week. And you guys have a great evening, and we'll see you on Friday. And with that, have a good one, guys.